So I wanted to do a video just on like my history with the Zelda franchise, but I might instead do a podcast. And you can go check out my podcast over at geekdom101.libsyn.com. Longer discussions, with guests. Usually they're an hour to 2 hours on there. And I might do that, but I want to talk specifically about Link's Awakening, which is getting a remake for the Nintendo Switch. And I have so much love for Link's Awakening. My goodness. I was so excited when it got announced because I've gone on record of saying that I was not a fan of Breath of the Wild system at all. I felt like Breath of the Wild was more like a combination hybrid adventure game with kind of like a Skyrim sort of open world, that open world sort of optional side quest heavy kind of game, where you can just do anything, and it's a giant vast world with exploration. And I like exploration, but I felt like that game did it a little bit too much. I was just not a big fan of that game like everybody else was. I prefer the top-down Zeldas. It's been a debate for many years. What kind of Zelda games do you like more? Do you like the 3D ones or the top-down ones? Well, I love Ocarina of Time, and I love Majora's Mask, and I like Wind Waker. Those are three of my favorites. But I've always preferred the top-down gameplay. So, because I grew up with the original Legend of Zelda on Nintendo, Zelda 2, and of course, my favorite, A Link to the Past. And right after A Link to the Past, the next game that came out was Link's Awakening on Game Boy. And at the time, we had all kind of assumed that Link's Awakening was going to be a sequel. Love Link's Awakening. The old Game Boy, before Pokemon, which really kind of blew up the Game Boy, there were a lot of great titles in that system. Mario Land 2, Wario Land were two great games that I played when I was younger. Those are two different games. Mario Land 1 had some weird problems, but Mario Land 2, they got it right. Really enjoyed that game. And also Metroid 2 was phenomenal. Great game on Game Boy. Then Link's Awakening came out. So, Game Boy became the system that would get sequels to games after Super Nintendo. Because Metroid 2... Well, Metroid 2 was before Super Metroid, but you know what I mean. You'd get, a sequel exclusive to that game. So Link's Awakening, to me, was a breathtaking game. And for many years, people would debate, what's your favorite Zelda game? Link to the Past or Link's Awakening? And then when Ocarina of Time came out, that got thrown into that mix. Well, A Link's Awakening, I have so many amazing memories of. The fact that Ganon, I'm not trying to spoil it, but he's not the main villain here. It's more of a side story. And the creativity of not just the island, not just the actual twist and what was going on. It's not Hyrule. And this was the first Zelda game that had come out where you're not in Hyrule. And I'm okay with Zelda games not being in Hyrule, especially the side stories. And after Link's Awakening, they came out with these two Zelda games called Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. If you're a fan, you remember these. Really good. Some of the most underrated games, I think. So when I found out they were remaking Link's Awakening on Switch, I was so excited because this is kind of what I wanted. And, they actually already did a soft remake of Link's Awakening a long time ago called Link's Awakening DX, where it's basically the same game, but you have an extra dungeon. I believe it's one extra dungeon. Wasn't very visually pleasing, but it worked for Zelda. I mean, I enjoyed Link's Awakening, but it's even better with color because Zelda has always been a very colorful franchise. It masked on the 3DS, and those games came out after Link's Awakening. So it's like, well, are we going to forget 3DS is the same company porting Link's Awakening to the Switch? And man, it just looks so Awakening. I haven't played the game yet, but it certainly looks like it would feel like Link's Awakening 7, which had this new remake of that game is very much, changing a lot of the mechanics. Not everything. This game feels like it's going to be the same mechanics, probably improved mechanics, hopefully with more weapons and more dungeons and things like that. Maybe a couple extra ones to really make it feel, like it's a modern game, even though it still has that kind of funny little pixelated, not pixelated, that's not the word, rendered kind of 3D Wind Waker kind of look to it. I love that look. I'm a big fan of Wind Waker Link. So seeing the young Link, the chibi Link, I guess you can say, come back, I'm all for it. I mean, I remember the game of the past so much. Now, looking at the footage from E3, God, it just looks, I'm so excited. They show the windfish, that opening scene with the windfish, except it's way more epic and grandiose. You see the mountains and everything, and I'm just watching it okay, this is bringing back some good memories here. Now, apparently, when you explore the overworld, there's some kind of issue where the frame drops, or frame rate drops. It goes from 30 to 60 FPS. And those are the kind of things that I didn't notice it in the video footage. If the frame rate drops for like a second, it's like whatever. But if it gets blurry or there are skip frames like in the middle of a battle, it is going to end up hindering the gameplay. So I'm hoping that by the time the game actually comes out and it's been fully tested, that won't be a problem. Nintendo's usually really good about those kinds of things. They usually don't even like drop that many patches for games. I mean, they that game as much as everybody else did, you know, and I tried it for several hours. This is more my style, you know, and I love the way this looks. So yeah, this will be a title that I'm going to be adding to my collection when it comes out for the Switch. And if you agree, leave a comment. If you aren't really a big fan of it, that's okay too. But let me know what you think about Link's Awakening and post your Link's Awakening memories. I just remember playing this game when I was younger, and it was like, this is the sequel to Link to the Past. It was my second favorite Zelda game for a very long time. Come on, there's a few other ones too. You know, Final Fantasy Adventure, which is also just got released in the Mana Collection, so that's good. You know, I gotta get that too later on. There's gonna be a physical version of that coming out in August, so I'm gonna pick that up as well. Because, brother, if you like Zelda, you know, Secret of Mana, Seiken Densetsu, the entire series is quality. So I am excited. I'm very much excited to see where that goes, you know, how good that is, and to play an actual legit translation of Seiken Densetsu 3, which we all played. You know, it's always exciting to come back and cover that. So thank you again for watching. I hope you have a great day. And like I said, post your memories down below, and I'll talk to you in the next one.